What quickly started as a calm market erupted into a tsunami of the meta cards shooting up in price at an unprecedented speed. With that being said, what is this necessarily meaning for the game state as a whole, and what cards particular are going to be the highly sought after cards? Well, we're going to dive into that right now. Yeah, and that's going to be the thing, and the very difficult part about this is that we saw a weird flux where on Saturday everything was moderately calm and normal, and then we woke up this morning and everything seemed to double in price, which is kind of crazy to consider. Biggest thing was, yeah, we saw, the Auroras was always going to be a little bit more of a pricey card. It is now near $100. Deadbloom Predator was hovering around $60 to $70 on TCG Player, shot up to $100. But the biggest surprise for me, at least, is going to be that Falling Star ended up going from $3 all the way up to $25. Kai'Sa stayed about the same, going from about 44 to about 60. Not as big of an increase as what you normally see, but still, this is something that is really surprising for this. I mean, we even saw Thousand Tail Watcher that was around $15 is now selling for near $38 to $45. So this is being very difficult because what initially was going to be seeming like what was going to be a nice easy ease into the game where you were able to pick up your cards for a moderately good price, it's awesome. It's going to be really good. Likewise, though, and kind of maybe even a little bit of a red flag, might be the fact that if you did end up buying your cards yesterday, are your people who are sellers on TCG Player just going to cancel the orders and then replace them at the new higher price? That's something that's pretty alarming. I bought an Acathian Rain yesterday at my local game store while we were playing our event from a friend for $38. I then went on later that night and ended up buying another Acathian Rain for $38 as well, because I just didn't end up pulling all of them. And so with that, I'm a little bit hesitant and a little bit fearful as well, because the person who I bought the card from very well might just be like, cancel, I'm going to be selling this for $67 now. And that's a little scary for me as well, because it's like, well, I'm going to Vegas and it would be really nice to be able to compete at a high level, especially when I have so much already even invested in this trip. That's going to be difficult. And I think a lot of people are going to be experiencing this as well. This is going to be something that is, maybe a little bit scarier for a lot of people to be able to, experience, because what we thought was initially going to be a fairly easy game to get into now might be a little bit more difficult. I mean, heck, even just building the Auroras for Master Yi, what used to literally be probably, a couple $100 to build the deck is now skyrocketing up to $800 to $1,000. Now, with that also, I think something that should be noted as well is I'm wondering what all might be causing this. Do I know? Not necessarily, but there's some theories at least to go around with that. Biggest thing, though, is I think there also became a lot of hype with the national tournament in China and the release of this game. We saw a high influx of Kai'Sa, high influx of Master Yi, Deadbloom Predator, all that going on. And we were able to see a Kai'Sa versus Master Yi in the finals as well. And even something like that, such a big tournament, could be a very big driving force to tie up the market in this case. Luckily, a lot of the stuff isn't necessarily really all that high. There's only a couple of cards in particular that have made that big leap. And so it'll be interesting to see how this continues to develop as we continue to move on through the coming weeks. But also it's going to be interesting on if we just ended up getting a couple of like scalpers who are ending up buying up the market of those chase cards to drive up the market so that they are able to make a quick profit, or if there really is just such an influx of people flooding into this game that it's just driving up the market naturally. We have a lot of really big tournaments going on and coming up in Riftbound, at least in the Americas, at least in the coming weeks/months. We at least have one regionals in Houston that's at the beginning of December. That doesn't give people a lot of time to be able to gather their decks and start playtesting. We also have the 10K in Vegas, which is literally in 21 days. And then after that as well, we even have the Orlando tournament in the middle of, or early-ish December. And so a lot of big stuff going on, and I think a lot of people are going to be chasing these cards. And so it is a little bit disheartening. I mean, we saw, like I said, Thousand Tail Watcher was $15 on Saturday, and now we are taking a look at $42. And this is the hard part, because especially when product is already being as scarce as it possibly is, especially at least depending on your area, it can be really difficult for you to try to go ahead and push through this. And so it'll be curious to see how this will all continue to unravel. Tasty Fae Folk even saw like maybe I think $1.50 increase as well. Not necessarily too bad up there. A lot of stuff actually has ended up falling. Foxfire was $11. It did end up going up to $15. Invert Timeline is a really interesting one as well at $15. But I mean, again, we're looking at these prices and they're really not all that bad. Jinx Rebel is going to be really interesting as well. And I'm curious about how these prize packs are going to be influxing into the market as well, because you get like Jinx as an Origins with an Origin stamp on it as well. That could be fairly valuable. So it'll be interesting to see how that impacts the market. But so far, it looks like a lot of the stuff here isn't necessarily too crazy. Yes, Showstopper, $34, not too shabby. You know, that really does suck. I would like to see that more around $15 to $20. But I mean, right there, market price as well. It very well might only be that the thing that we have right now is, yeah, we have a $34 one right now, and then it immediately goes up to $48 and $59. So for those who are trying to play Set, man, it might be a little bit difficult for you to be able to do so, because Set also has his main card, which also can end up being going for, you know, $60 to $80 as well, which we will be taking a look in this market. Likewise, Baited Hook is a very sought-after card for the Darius. We saw an increase with Darius as well, where he was hovering around $5 in this current meta and ended up, you know, doing a good price spike in this case. Deadbloom Predator looks like has simmered down a little bit, though that is still a lot of money. And most of these decks run 2 or 3. So already running, you know, $220, $240, even $300 worth just to be able to have this in your deck is a little alarming, little scary to be able to see. But, you know, that's kind of how it just is going to be, at least for the first initial weeks. I do feel like that this market is going to be calming down a little bit, especially after the regional in Houston, especially because right after that, also in the following month, we will have the second wave of Set 1 as well hitting. But I also feel like that a lot of people who are preparing to go for the regionals, there's going to be a high influx of prices. And then afterwards, we're going to be able to see probably a lot of people who went there, or even those who might not have been able to make it, might be selling their stuff as well. And that should simmer down the market a little bit. But again, this is time will tell kind of thing. Falling Star, yeah, exactly like I said, it ended up being at around $3 earlier, which is just absolutely crazy. And I was like, oh, nice. I was even thinking of picking up a few, but now going up $19, $21, $24 in that case. And I mean, yeah, you know, we had 51 items sold at that point. There's the $5 October 31st on release day. And it ended up staying at around that price for nearly 24 to 40, not 48 hours, but just under 2 days. Especially because I was a little worried with what I was able to pull. I pulled 2 Falling Stars and I needed a third one. Luckily, my friend was able to go ahead and give me one. That was very helpful. And I gave him a bunch of my Ari stuff. And so luckily we were able to help each other out with that. Now, these rune are going back and forth on prices as well. You're seeing anywhere between $15 all the way up to, $27 for these runes. They are incredibly rare, so it definitely makes sense as to why that is. But even something like Mind Splitter, which is an absolutely insane card, you are only seeing at 98 cents or around, sometimes $3 in the influx, even though it is, just as good of a card as Deadbloom Predator, but isn't necessarily as sought after in this meta. And so that's going to be something that's really interesting about all of this, is how things are going to influx, because you're taking a look at a bunch of these prices and they're moderately normal. Even the alluring Ari here is only going for $14 at this point as well. Carnivorous Snapvine, though he doesn't see as much of meta play as what you would normally see, is only at $158. And a bunch of other stuff that are just really common stuff. Even the alt art set here in this case, an overnumbered card is going for between, $19 to $30 depending on the price. So really fun stuff to be able to see, at least, where a lot of the stuff isn't going to be too expensive. If you are building Ari, you do have the time warps that are going to be very expensive, the Thousand Tail Watchers that are now expensive, but otherwise they aren't necessarily too bad to build that deck. And that's the thing. It's like, if you're building Master Yi here, you're going to be spending a lot of money. You're running, 2 or 3 White Flame Protectors. Well, that's $120 right there. If you're playing set and you're running 3 of these guys, well, right now it looks like he's actually dipped a little bit in price, going down to $22. Now, again, and the thing to keep in mind with a lot of this is that you look at what these listings are even at. There's only 7 listings of set. The buyout has been real here, even 26, which still isn't a whole ton, all things considered. The competition isn't necessarily there. With these influx of prices also, one thing is those who are going to be wanting to move their product sooner rather than later are probably going to be logging into their TCG player either today or tomorrow morning, see where they're at on the leaderboard of prices, essentially, because the higher priced you are, the lower you are on these. And they might go ahead and try to push these down. That's what happened with Victor. With the signed Victor that I actually managed to pull with my wife. It's going on around, $690 right now. And it looks like actually the one at $640 ended up selling. I checked this a little bit ago, and this is causing a lot of people to really keep lowering the pricing a little bit. And so this is going to be interesting to see on how all of this is going to shape up. But, even like these signature cards are starting to fall down a little bit as well, because people are wanting to move these high valued cards sooner rather than later. And so it's going to be fun to see how this will continue to shape things up. But I'm going to be curious to see what might be happening in these coming weeks. A lot of this stuff, even like something like Blitzcrank, which could have a lot of fun, ending up being only 98 cents. Alt Art Misfortune, $18. But then you also even have stuff, like the Dazzling Aurora, which is going to be $85. That's a lot of money. Got to take out that second mortgage to be able to get these cards into your hands. But then a lot of it, of course, is, simmering down a lot as well. But it's like those few chase cards are so difficult. Time Warp, it says 9 listings is all. So there was a little bit of a buyout. Zonia's Hourglass going up to $12. That was like a $3 card yesterday. Now getting bought up in that case. And again, that's why I think a lot of this is correlating with the China Nationals. We had a big stream going on in the Americas, at least. With Turn Them Sideways, they do a big broadcast a lot with these tournaments. They could have had some really good viewers. A lot of new people are just trying to figure out the meta, probably turned into those tournaments, and now saw Master Yi and are like, I want to build. Cool. Time Warp is pretty sought after, though. Kaisa and Ari are the ones who do really like to play this card. $75, but again, only 9 listings. And so it feels like, Seal of Unity, $25 now, 7 listings. a little alarming, a little scary, could put a lot of people off from getting into this game. Darius Altar going up to 34, was at 40. That has simmered down a little bit. That's good. But again, even like something like Unchecked Power, which is a bit more of a kind of filler, not necessarily filler, but it's not as seen in side decks or main decks in particular here. But it's only $9 in this case. Whereas on the other side, we got some Sprite Mother going up to $7. And I mean, that's going to be in multiple decks even as well, even though it's not even necessarily all that rare of a card. You know, there's a lot of people who are pulling it, but that's just how it happens to be. We even saw boxes, for example, that were really interesting as well, because when the game released on Friday, by Saturday, the market was actually down to about $179 for a box. The box has now increased to about $225 for the box again, which was about the price that we saw before this entire game came out in this case. So a lot of interesting things to see there. Volley Bear, he fell actually. This was something that was really surprising. 53 listings. He went all the way from $24 as the alt art all the way down to now $7 to $13 depending on the listings here. So really interesting to see even like a $10 drop in that case. Set again $22, 7 listings, but I mean, you're looking at these really sought after cards and they're getting bought up in the market, which is driving things up. As packs continue to be cracked, a lot of the Riot boxes haven't even necessarily been shipped out yet. I know I'm still looking for my Proving Grounds from Riot. That hasn't been shipped yet. And I know some people have received their stuff, but I haven't gotten mine yet, nor have I gotten a cancellation email either. That's a good sign. So we'll see how that ends up going. Bullet Time is interesting too at $19. So kind of fun to see where all of this kind of goes up and around with all of this. Again, too, a lot of people are just hopping into this game. And so we'll see how this continues to shake out the market as we continue to move on with all of this. But it seems like, you know, there we go with like the Annie Darkchild starter, $12. Difficult to be able to get her outside of Proving Grounds because there's really no way to do so. Ari Showcase, $144. The Kaisa Showcase legend is going for around $180. Very sought after right there. Kaisa Survivor going around $79 now. My friend ended up pulling his, and I bought his literally on the spot while we were doing our thing, our event and whatnot with the structure decks and the 3 packs. He pulled one. Sure enough. And I was like, okay, dude, like I just need a Kaisa. I will buy that off of you right now. And ended up buying it for about $53. So that was lucky in that case. And so, I mean, you're taking a look at a lot of this, though, and it can be very difficult to watch. You know, you don't want to see these high prices on the alt art stuff. Yes, you know, that's okay because it's a lot rarer, but a lot of these meta cards are really skyrocketing up, and it's becoming very difficult for you to be able to build this stuff successfully. You're going to be maybe only able to get 1 or 2, if any, out of the packs that you're able to open. And that's going to be difficult on trying to really build a deck. You know, $65 for the Kaisa. The OG one, at least, was, you know, at $43 yesterday and has skyrocketed up $20 more. Now, luckily in the Kaisa main deck, you're running 1, maybe 2. But if you're playing Annie, you're running 3. $180 right there. Very difficult to try to keep up with in that case. Time Warp again. Oh, this actually kind of dropped a little bit, but between $158 and $174, 29 listings. Surprisingly, a lot more people actually have been pulling that. I've seen a lot of posts of people posting this online of that they're pulling it. I had 2 people at the event that I went to that actually pulled the Daughter of the Void as well. Really surprising there, just because the odds of, pulling that are incredibly high. And that seemed to have brought down the price a decent amount as well. And so, I mean, again, Ari Inquisitive going up to $20 in that case. But those are kind of outliers all in all. Now we're getting to the signed cards. There's only a few more things to really look at here. But, I mean, you're taking a look at these, and they're really not too shabby. All in all, yes. There's 5 listings for $2,000. My friend ended up having me sell his for $1,100. That's the price that we see right there. We sold his, and that was the big tell. But it looks like everyone else is really trying to go ahead and sell for around, $2,000 for a signature. And I get that that's going to be sought after. They might be in it for the long game, not the quick sell in this case. But my friend just really wanted to sell it and try to, pay for his Christmas and whatnot for his kids. So I was happy to move that for him. Sold the morning of. It hit the market at midnight because I wasn't on the pre-sale for TCG Player, and it sold by the time I woke up at 6:30 a.m. So really interesting to see how all of that is working out. But man, this market might be a little interesting to see. I still think, though, that these prices are bound to come down. Again, this is a lot of people that are probably trying to get into Houston, building these meta decks. There are going to be even new people who are trying to get into this game, whether they're coming from Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, wherever they're coming from, Lorcana, whatever it might be. And they're just like, hey, well, I need to go ahead and just get into this game as quickly as possible. I'm just going to buy the meta deck and call it good. There's a lot of reasons why this could be happening, and it's very interesting to be able to see. Again, though, it will calm down. Now, does that necessarily mean that Deadbloom is going to be going down to, maybe $40? Maybe set 2, set 3. But it looks like, you might be seeing $50, $60 once the meta's kind of shaken out a little bit more and we get more regular printing. It might finally go down to maybe $50. And that can be a little bit difficult. But luckily, it seems like the rest of the market is incredibly healthy. And so that's going to be really interesting to continue to see how everything is developing. We have just literally released this game, and we are now diving into this meta and trying to figure out where everything is. And so I'm going to be curious to see how all of this is going to continue to shape up. But I have a lot of hope for this as well. First and foremost, I'm really excited to see how this is going to shape up, especially with being able to even build a full foil deck. Because the rares and above are already foiled, you just need to find the cheap cards that are foiled, and you can build a fully foiled deck, minus maybe the runes that are super expensive at that point. But still, that's kind of a really cool idea to be able to consider as well. So I can't wait to see what is going to be happening with this meta. How are your feelings about the market, though? Do you think these prices are going to be coming down, and if so, when? Go ahead and let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, guys, have a good one.